Hi everyone, and welcome back to our Foundations for Discipleship. We're studying the topic of angelology, study of the angels, and I think this is going to be our third session in studying angels, and so we're going to start where we left off, and we left off with after teaching about Seraphim. Now we're going to move to Cherubim and understand that particular spirit being. Now, if you want the handout for this, go to ariel.org. This is Dr. Fruchtenbaum's material. You can go to the store aspect of the website and then click on Messianic Bible Studies, and there you will find the Messianic Bible Study in regards to angelology. And so you want to get that. I think it's like $5. You can download it to your computer, and you'll have the notes for this as we go through it. But if not, you can just listen to it and enjoy, and we'll study now some more aspects of angelology, and now we're going to look at cherubim. And so this particular spirit creature is the third and highest order of celestial beings that God has created. And so you have cherubim at the top, you have seraphim, and then you have angels. And that's the three orders right there. Cherub, sometimes it's hard to translate, but it means to guard or to cover. It is used total of 91 times, and 27 times it's used in the singular. And anyway, these cherubim are seen all throughout the Bible. And we're going to take a look at them right now in the scripture. So like if for instance, the first time you see them is in Genesis chapter 3, verse 24. The cherubim guard the entrance to the Garden of Eden once Adam and Eve are kicked out, if you recall. And then in Exodus 25, 18 through 22, cherubim cover the mercy seat, if you recall that. Also, in Exodus 26:1, figures of cherubim were embroidered into the curtains of the tabernacle. And then furthermore, in Exodus 37, verses 7 through 9, cherubim covered the mercy seat. Again, another reference to them covering the mercy seat. So obviously they knew what they looked like. Moses knew what they looked like, and they put that on the curtains, they put that on the mercy seat and whatnot. And so they knew what these things looked like. So we see glimpses of them in the Bible, and we're going to talk about their appearances, what they look like, but they knew early on what these creatures looked like. In fact, you'll see them in other religions in similar form. So even other ancient religions, like the Babylonian religions of ancient Mesopotamia, had similar ideas of cherubim. Interesting enough about cherubim, many people know Revelation 19 when the Messiah comes back riding on a white horse, right? People have that image in their head, and that's true. But what they don't understand is there's a similar passage in Psalm 18:10 that states that the Messiah will be riding on a cherub in the second coming. Anyway, the thing that's interesting about that is, so is that a contradiction? It says in Psalm 18:10 that the Messiah is riding on a cherub, but in Revelation 19 it says he's riding on a horse. Which is it? It's not actually a contradiction. It is that the horse that he rides is a cherubim horse. That cherubim angel looks like a horse. And so that's how we reconcile that together. It's a cherubim horse that the Messiah rides. It's not a real horse, like an animal horse. It's a cherubim horse. It's an angelic horse. Anyway, the book that gives us the most details concerning cherubim is the Book of Ezekiel, and explains how God sits above the cherubim. And if you look at Ezekiel chapter 1, like 5 through 28, it gives a very extensive description of these cherubim. And the idea here is, first, is when you read it, you're going to realize that they have the basic likeness of a man. You'll see that in verse 5. And then each one has 4 different faces: a man, a lion, an ox, and an eagle. And in this, they resemble the seraphim in some sense, right? But they have 4 faces. And thirdly, each of them has 4 wings. Seraphim have 6, but these have 4 wings, 2 on each side of the body. Fourthly, their feet are absolutely straight for some reason. I don't know all that involves in that, but we see that their feet are straight. And then we also see that the soles of their feet are like the soles of a calf's foot. So they don't have a human foot. It's like a calf's foot. And then they sparkle. They light up like burnished brass. They're very luminescent. And then Ezekiel describes them having hands of a man under their wings on their 4 sides. Another aspect is they appear in 4 different ways. They appear like burning brass. They're like burning coals of fire. They're like torches, and they're like fire in their midst. So there's a lot of blazing appearance, fiery appearance, sparkling appearance, brilliant appearance about them. And they travel, this is in verse 14 of Ezekiel chapter 1, they travel with the speed of a flash of lightning. They're very fast when they travel. The noise of their wings is like many waters, like the voice of God, like the noise of a tremendous army, Ezekiel notes. They are connected and closely associated also with the Shekinah glory. If you read Ezekiel chapter 10, 1 through 22, the cherubim were involved in the departure of the Shekinah glory, if you recall. And then in Ezekiel 28, 14 through 16, it states that Satan was a cherub when he was created. In fact, he was the anointed cherub. Just as Michael was and is the archangel, the one in authority over the other 3rd class of angels, Satan was the arch cherub, the one in authority over all the other cherubim. And so, since the cherubim are the highest order, and with Satan being the arch cherub, this made him of a higher category than even Michael or even Gabriel. Basically, Satan was at that time the highest ranking angelic creature. He was the arch cherub, and that's the highest rank of spirit creature. Anyway, the last place you'll see cherub mentioned in the Old Testament is Ezekiel 41, and it talks about something in the future coming, and 3 things are stated about the cherubim. First, the figures of the cherubim will be engraved on the walls of the millennial temple again. Secondly, the cherubim will have 2 faces, one that is that of a man, the other face of a young lion. And thirdly, they will also be engraved on the doors of the millennial temple. So even in the millennium, they're going to be etched in and engraved there to be a reminder of these creatures. In the New Testament, the only place that cherubim are mentioned is Hebrews 9:5. In keeping with the teaching of the Old Testament that cherubim overshadow the mercy seat of the tabernacle. Well, a couple things we want to note from this. Basically 7 things that can be deduced about them. First, there are 3 different types of categories of cherub. First, there's the ones that have only 1 face and 2 wings. Second, there are those who have 2 faces and 2 wings. And third, there are those who have 4 faces and 4 wings. So there's 3 different types of cherubim. And it really, when you study about Satan, it never exactly tells you what kind of cherub he is, but we know that he is one of the 3 categories. So we don't know if he has 2 faces, if he has 1 face, if he has 4 faces, if he has 2 wings, if he has 4 wings. We don't know. We don't know. So all that we know is that he's a cherub, and he was the arch cherub. Secondly, these cherubs are closely related to the throne of God. They're the ones actually who carry the throne, according to Ezekiel chapter 1. See, the seraphim surround the throne, but the cherubim actually carry the throne and then cover it from above. When you study about Satan, and we'll do that in Satanology, he was the covering cherub. So you had those who carried the throne, but he was above the throne as he looked down. And he was the canopy cherub, as they call. Anyway, because the cherubim bear and carry the throne, this is the reason why it is stated that God is the one who sits above the cherubim. The cherubim then are closely related, obviously, to the throne of God. They're the protectors of the throne of God. They are in very close proximity to the throne. And the way it works in heaven is the closer you are to the throne of God and where God is, the more important you are. And that comes in later on for even our rewards in service to the Lord in eternity, is that based on our rewards here, you will serve Christ closer to the throne. Less rewards, you serve further away. It doesn't mean that you won't see Christ. It doesn't mean that you won't behold his face, but your service to him, your reward of service, will be based on your proximity to the throne. That's how it works. And so anyway, you want to make sure you do what you can as a Christian to make sure that you serve the Lord in eternity closer to the throne. That's the order of importance. That's the order of reward, so to speak, for us. Anyway, the other thing we can note about cherubim is they're related to the Shekinah glory. They reflect the Shekinah glory. And obviously they were involved in the departure of the Shekinah glory in 586 BC before the temple was destroyed by the Babylonians. They're related to God's presence. Again, this is talking about the Shekinah glory as well. And they are very much concerned with God's justice and might. And so while the seraphim were concerned with the worship and holiness of God, the cherubim are concerned with the justice, the power, and the might of God. That's their big deal. They defend God's holy character and defend his presence, which is the reason why they need their might, as they're the defender. Anyway, they have the ability to carry out God's will swiftly among the nation because they travel like lightning. So with all that being said, now let's turn to the works of angels. There are 7 different categories that we're going to have to discuss. And let's talk about, first of all, the works of angels in relationship to God. It concerns their work for him. And in this category, there are 4 specific ministries we need to pay attention to. First, they're employed in the worship of God, and they actively worship God. Second, they execute God's will. God's will is often carried out by the means of angels, if you'll notice in the scripture. Thirdly, the angels will rejoice in the work of God. So like, for instance, when God created the heavens and the earth, the angels shouted for joy. When there is salvation, angels rejoice and things of that nature. Fourth, they also execute God's judgments. Angels were used to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah. They're used in connection with the 10th plague of Egypt. They were used in connection with the pestilences that went on in Israel, and they're used in the book of Revelation extensively. Now, let's move to the works of angels as agents of revelation. And this includes, like, for instance, the law of Moses did not come to Moses directly, but it was mediated to Moses by the means of angels. This is kind of hinted at in Deuteronomy 33:2, and this is clearly stated in Acts 7:53, Galatians 3:19, Hebrews 2:2. Furthermore, while Daniel often received his revelation directly from God, in some of his material he received from angels, such as Daniel 8, verse 1, all the way through chapter 12 of Daniel, verse 13, came through the means of an angel. Anyway, same thing is true of Zechariah. Zechariah's book is 14 chapters long, but the first 6 of the chapters came by the means of angels, giving direct revelation from God. Obviously, the book of Revelation, written by the Apostle John, was mediated and revealed to him by the means of an angel. You see this in Revelation 1:1, Revelation 10, 1 through 11, 17:1, 19, verses 9 through 10, 21, verse 9, and 22, verse 16. Now, let's look at the work of angels in the life of the Messiah, Jesus. Angels were used in 5 specific areas, in 5 specific periods, we should say, in the life of the Messiah. Obviously, they were there at Messiah's birth. It was an angel that predicted the birth of the Messiah to Mary. Remember that in Luke 1, 26 through 38, and to Joseph. And then angels were used to announce the birth of the Messiah to the Jewish shepherds outside of Bethlehem. Remember that? It was an angel who warned Joseph to flee to Bethlehem, and an angel that told Joseph to leave Egypt and return to Israel. So they were involved in the Messiah's birth and all that whole period of time. And then in Messiah's ministry, Psalm 91, 1 through 12, predicted that angels would be used throughout the ministry of the Messiah. Paul affirmed this in the general statement in 1 Timothy 3:16, when he said that Messiah was seen of angels throughout his ministry. When Jesus was tempted, angels were used to minister to him in his temptation. Also, throughout his ministry, angels were ascending and descending upon the Son of Man. This is John 1, verse 51. They ministered to Jesus during his agony in the Garden of Gethsemane, if you recall. And finally, according to Matthew 26:53, there were more than 12 legions of angels ready to defend him at his trial if he needed them for any purpose. And of course he did not, but they were ready to be at his disposal. Then, the third period of time that you saw angels was surrounding the resurrection. And it was an angel who rolled away the stone, if you recall that, from the tomb. Angels were used to announce the resurrection to the women who came to the tomb. And then later on in the Messiah's ascension, you saw another time where angels were involved in this. After he ascended, angels announced that this same Jesus, they said, who was then departing, would come again in like manner. Acts chapter 1, remember that? And the phrase "in like manner" means that just as he left in the clouds of heaven, or the Shekinah clouds, he will someday return in the clouds of heaven, referring to the second coming. That will be the sign of the coming of the Son of Man, is the Shekinah clouds. So he left in the Shekinah clouds, he will return in the Shekinah clouds at the second coming. And then let's move to the second coming. Angels are involved in the second coming, which is still future, obviously, and angels will come with him in the clouds of heaven, and thus angels are involved in pretty much all of the major activities in the life of the Messiah. They're also involved in the rapture to some extent, as the voice of the archangel shouts for the rapture of the church. An angel is used primarily, probably Michael in that passage. The archangel would be Michael. And so they're involved in a lot of aspects of the Messiah. Now, let's turn our attention now to the works of angels among the nations. So first, angels function in the capacity of what is called cosmocrats. Now, what do you mean by that? It means that they're world rulers or rulers of nations. So, for example, in Daniel chapter 10, verse 13, a leading angelic being was the prince of the kingdom of Persia. And so Michael, the archangel, not only has authority over the other angels, but also happens to be the chief prince over Israel. So you can see there was a prince of Persia, then you got Michael over Israel, and so they have these delegated authorities over these nations. Second, angels are closely associated with the human rulers over specific nations. So for example, Isaiah 14, 3 through 20 speaks about Babylon. And verses 3 through 11 speak about the human king of Babylon. But if you move to verses 12 through 14, it speaks of Satan. And then verses 15 through 20 once again speak about the king of Babylon. And so the same thing is true when you read Ezekiel 28, 1 through 19, which speaks about Tyre. And so verses 1 through 10 speak about a human prince of Tyre, and verses 11 and 19 are addressed to Satan as the king of Tyre. So because both fallen and unfallen angelic beings are used as cosmocrats or world rulers, they carry out God's will among the nations. Many things that happen among the nations are due to these angelic beings. Quite frequently, the reason nations go to war against another is because they have been moved to do so by these cosmocratic angelic beings, either for good or for bad. Now let's talk about the work of angels among unbelievers. And there's three facets we need to pay attention to in this sense. Angels announce impending judgments to unbelievers. This was done historically in Genesis 19 when the angels announced the coming destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. In the future, they will do so as they announce the terrible bowl judgments in Revelation 14. And then, secondly, angels inflict punishment. They did it in the past. For example, it was an angel who carried out the 10th plague of the firstborn sons of Egypt, if you recall that. And others are found in like 2 Samuel 24:16, Ezekiel 9, 1 through 8. And then in the New Testament, examples in Acts 12:23, when an angel was used to smite Herod Agrippa with a fatal disease. You remember that? And so what they have done in the past, they will do in the future. Angels will inflict punishment in the tribulation period. And so you can see this in the book of Revelation in numerous passages. Angels will also act as reapers. So at the end of the tribulation, angels will be used to act as reapers. And what do you mean by that? Well, reaper is separating believers from unbelievers, and they will do that work. Now let's talk about angels' relationship to believers. This is the sixth category of work, and the Bible has a great deal to say about this, and there's many passages that speak about this. There are basically 10 things that we want to note about this. So number one, in regards to believer salvation, there is rejoicing at the believer's salvation. Some could interpret this as God is rejoicing, that there's rejoicing in the presence of angels. So it depends on how that verse is translated. Some say it's the angels rejoicing. Some say it's actually God. So we'll leave it to your decision. Two, believer's guardianship. This is where we get the idea of a guardian angel. And they do guard, usually carry out protective care for the individual they're assigned to. You'll see hints of this in Psalm 34:7, Psalm 91:11. And those two psalms teach that nothing can happen to a believer outside of God's will because the general protective care of angels. So they play a part in this. The verses do not teach that nothing bad can happen to a believer, so don't misunderstand that, but that nothing can happen outside of the will of God. So when bad things happen to a believer, it's not because angels were failing to do their job, but God did allow it. And so we have to keep that in mind. Matthew 18:10 teaches that all children have guardian angels. And those guardian angels probably stay with us the rest of our lives until the day we die. They're probably the ones who escort us when we die to the New Jerusalem. Hebrews 1:14 states that every believer has a guardian angel as well. So that adds more to this. In fact, as soon as one is saved, he has a guardian angel assigned to him. So everybody has these angels attached to us. and guarding us and protecting us. In terms of believers' safety, they're often used to save or rescue believers from specific situations. For example, in Genesis 19, 1 through 22, the angels rescued Lot, right? Genesis 32, 1 through 2, the angels were used to aid Jacob, if you recall. 1 Kings 19, 5 through 6, an angel was used to feed Elijah, the prophet. Angels protected Elijah in 2 Kings 6, 17, and in Daniel 3, 24 through 28, an angel protected the three friends of Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, in the fiery furnace. And in Daniel 6:22, an angel shut the mouths of lions so that no harm came to Daniel the prophet. If you look in Acts 5, 17 through 20, the angel rescued the apostles. Finally, an angel rescued Peter in Acts 12, 6 through 11. How about in guidance? Angels play a role in guiding believers. The fourth work of angels, obviously, is to guide the believer into truth and action. For example, in Matthew 1, 20 through 21, an angel instructed Joseph to believe Mary's story, that she really was a virgin, even though she was pregnant. An angel brought Philip, if you recall, to a situation where he could witness to the Ethiopian eunuch in Acts 8:26. In Acts 10, 3 through 8, an angel instructed Cornelius to send for Peter so that he might preach the gospel to him. The same point is reaffirmed in Acts 11, 13 through 14. If you look at Acts 27, 23 through 24, an angel guided Paul as well. How about in our prayers? Do they aid and assist in our prayers? Yes. Sometimes prayers are answered by the means of angels. In the case of Daniel, for example, this happened twice. Daniel 9, 20 through 23 and 10, 12 through 13. An angel was used to answer the prophet's prayer for more revelation. In the New Testament, groups of saints were praying for Peter's release from prison, if you recall. In answer to their prayers, the angel was used to rescue the apostle, if you recall that. How about encouragement? Do angels encourage believers? Yes. You can see this in Acts 5, Acts 27. They were used to encourage believers. How about in death? Well, the angels, according to Luke 16, carry the soul to its abode in heaven when a believer dies. So you're probably going to, if you pass away, you'll probably meet your guardian angels who will escort you to the New Jerusalem. That's their role. How about in observing? This is the eighth work. Angels have the ministry of observation to see how the believer is acting and responding. So in Luke 12, 8 through 9, the faith of a believer is confessed before angels. Later, angels observe when one is saved. Angels also observe the sufferings of believers in 1 Corinthians 4, 9. In 1 Corinthians 11:10, angels observe whether or not women are obedient to wear head coverings in the church. Again, that was for that period of time, but they were watching for that Paul mentions. In 1 Timothy 5:21, angels are present when believers make a commitment to the Lord. Angels observe and look into God's work of salvation according to 1 Peter 1, 10 through 12. Now, how about the local churches? The ninth work of angels in relationship to believers is that they serve as guardians over local churches. So they not only guard individual believers, but they guard individual local churches as well. Obviously, this is seen in Revelation chapter 2 and 3, where the letters are addressed to the angel of this or that church. Please don't misinterpret that as being, well, it just means messenger, and it's addressed to the pastor, or it's addressed to the one's going to read the letter. No, it's not. Angel means angel, and it doesn't get past that. And so what we understand is each local church has an angel assigned to it who observes that church. And so that's what the letters in Revelation are addressed to. Lastly, angels relate to believers in proper attitude towards angels. And what does that mean? Well, what should a believer's relationship towards angels in light of the 9 previous works be? Well, 4 things need to be noted. First, believers are allowed to wonder and be amazed at angels' ability and work, just as Daniel was. So believers are to respect that. Believers can appreciate their ministry. And believers are forbidden to worship angels, right? We know that. And lastly, believers will judge angels. Now, believers are not going to judge good angels, of course, but they're going to judge fallen angels at the great white throne judgment. So, with that being said, we're going to stop there. The next time we study angels, we're going to look at the work of angels in the future, particularly in the tribulation and the judgments that fall in that, and see how they work in that period of time. So, again, if you want the handout, go to ariel.org, go to Messianic Bible Studies, and download that, and you'll have all the notes for yourself to study. And until next time, God bless you and keep studying hard, okay? We'll see you next time.